This episode of Marijuana Today Daily is brought to you by our friends over at Agilent, a Fortune 500 company known for providing top-notch testing solutions to cannabis and hemp testing labs worldwide. Are you considering testing your cannabis in-house for potency? Agilent is giving away a free 1260 HPLC system for 1 year. If you're a cultivator or processor or cannabis testing lab, you may qualify for this giveaway. When you use Agilent's 1260 HPLC system for potency testing, you will immediately gain access to your data, know exactly when to harvest, and increase your sample throughput. Don't miss out on this 1260 HPLC system giveaway. Swing over to bit.ly.com/cannabis-contest to answer a few quick questions to enter to win for free. Again, that's bit.ly.com/cannabis-contest. Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021, and you're tuned in to episode 1035 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shay Gunther, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. We start off in New Mexico, where on Saturday, state lawmakers missed a deadline to pass legalization legislation, prompting Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham to state that she'll be calling them back into special session to do so. Governor Grisham spoke just a few hours before the noon deadline on Saturday to pass legislation during the regular legislative session, saying, quote, "We're going to have a special session in a week or two, and we're going to get cannabis because I'm not going to wait another year. We're going to win it, and we're going to have the social justice aspects that we know have to be in a package," unquote. Right now, it looks like New Mexico lawmakers will be called back around the end of this month, so we'll be circling back to this sometime next week. You can catch up on all the fill-in details and whatnot over at Marijuana Moment, where Ben Adlin, our new regular over on our weekly show Marijuana Today, has a good piece up. Speaking of new regulars on our weekly flagship show, Marijuana Today, we have fellow new regular Natalie Fertig, who writes over at Politico and who recently recorded her first episode with us, writing about the news that broke late last week regarding the firing of 5 White House staffers for having used marijuana sometime in their past. Natalie, writing with Mona Zhang, framed the news through the longer lens of history, which shows that President Joe Biden has never really been a friend to the idea of drug policy reform. He was, after all, one of the original architects of the modern-day war on drugs as a senator back in the 1980s, and though he has certainly evolved on the issue, last week's events with the White House staffers shows that there seems to be a pocket of lingering drug warrior left within the Biden administration. This is one of those stories that you should just read in full. Zip over to Politico for the full dive in. As we always do, we have all the news we cover linked to on our website at mjtodaydaily.com. Today's final top story has us up in North Dakota, where yesterday the State Senate Human Services Committee advanced legislation to legalize adult use without a recommendation one way or the other whether it should be advanced, as is usually done. Regular listeners should remember that a Republican lawmaker in North Dakota, Representative Jason Doctor, introduced legislation to legalize adult use as an end-around bill against a more progressive planned 2020 citizens ballot measure. Representative Doctor's bill was advanced out of the Senate committee yesterday without recommendation and will now swing over to the Senate Appropriations Committee, where it has to pass through before going up in front of the full Senate. This is a bit of a strange bill because we are, after all, an industry built on baby steps, and Representative Doctor's bill is certainly better than the prohibition now set in place in North Dakota, but it's kind of ridiculous that lawmakers are trying to supersede the will of the people, which makes the whole thing all the more interesting. A good one to have on your radar. Those are the top stories for today. It's time for Marijuana Today Daily Headlines Blitz. Before we blitz it in headlines, let's quickly thank our sponsor, Agilent, a Fortune 500 company known for providing top-notch testing solutions to cannabis and hemp testing labs worldwide. As I mentioned at the top of the show, Agilent is giving away a free 1260 HPLC system for 1 year. When you use Agilent's 1260 HPLC system, one of the things you get is instant access to all the right data about your growing marijuana. letting you lock down exactly when the peak moment to harvest is, which means you don't spend any more time growing your cannabis than you have to, and that you're always getting the best out of your plants. Swing over to bit.ly.com/cannabis-contest to enter your company for a chance to win 1 free year's use of Agilent's 1260 HPLC system, and to learn more about this very powerful and versatile tool. That's bit.ly.com/cannabis-contest. Signing up is quick, it's easy, it's free, and it could land you the use of an Agilent 1260 HPLC system for 1 year. Big thanks to everyone over at Agilent for the support that helps us keep the news lights on. All right, time for the Blitz. New York State is inching ever so closer to figuring out how to legalize adult-use marijuana, as late last week, an interview with State Senator Liz Krueger was published by WCNY Radio, where she hints that Governor Andrew Cuomo has given in during negotiations with lawmakers on 2 provisions for how legalization will be implemented, one concerning Homegrow and the other social equity funding. From the sounds of Senator Krueger's remarks, it seems like New York State's state legalization scheme will allow for adult-use homegrow and will contain the social equity provisions found within her Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act. You can catch all the other details and listen to the interview yourself over at Marijuana Moment. Keeping locked over on the East Coast for a headline, we have Rhode Island Governor Daniel McKee saying late last week that he would support a system allowing people to expunge their criminal records of past marijuana crimes, though the governor pointedly did not include language setting up expungement in a recent proposal he released for how he would like to implement adult use. Governor McKee has not historically been a supporter of legalization, but told news station WPRI that neighboring states like Massachusetts going legal has moved him to evolve his position. This is an interesting one to open up in full if you have Rhode Island on your list of states to watch. West Virginia legal marijuana regulators just issued a business license to the cannabis testing company Analab, which will help ease up a production bottleneck within the state as it works to build out its legal medical marijuana program. West Virginia should begin issuing medical cards to patients starting sometime this spring. The cannabis compliance software company Akerna just released its latest fiscal results for the quarter ending December 31st, with total revenue of $4.1 million, up 24% annually, sitting atop a gross profit of $2.7 million, up 60% from last year, and a net loss of $12.2 million, a substantial increase from the net loss of $3.8 million for the same quarter in 2019. Akerna reports having a touch under $18 million in cash as of December 31st. During a recent online forum held in New York City for mayoral candidates, former presidential candidate Andrew Yang said he is in favor of legalizing psilocybin mushrooms and marijuana, though he stopped short of endorsing the decriminalization of all drugs. As Kyle Yeager over Marijuana Moment has it on this, that seemed to be the general position held by most of the other candidates who appeared on the forum, which you can watch yourself over at Marijuana Moment. I think it's especially interesting to note the building acceptance of legalized psychedelics in more mainstream political circles. Kyle has another one here that's similar in tone to our previous headline and jumps just over the river to New Jersey, where Governor Phil Murphy said that he's open to the idea of decriminalizing all drugs. Governor Murphy spoke yesterday during a press briefing and said, quote, "Am I open-minded to further decriminalization? I suppose so, but I think we've taken the biggest step, and that is marijuana." Unquote. A bit wishy-washy on full decrim perhaps, but at the same time, it's pretty remarkable that we have major political figures like Governor Murphy signaling an acceptance of major drug policy reform. We have a sobering headline to finish the day with numbers out of Pennsylvania showing that the number of people arrested in the state last year for marijuana was actually up over the previous year. During the course of 2020, 20,200 people were arrested in Pennsylvania for marijuana crimes, up 1% from 2019's totals. That seems kind of silly for a state that is embracing more progressive cannabis policies, as much as Pennsylvania is, which now has a robust and thriving medical program and that seems to be well on its way towards adult use. But of course, systemic racism has gone nowhere, as we see that black people make up 31% of those arrested for cannabis crimes in Pennsylvania last year, even though they only comprise 12% of the population and use marijuana at the same rate as white people. The stats that were published showing the racial disparities and ongoing policing of cannabis were provided by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, otherwise known as NORML. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you again tomorrow with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links to all the news we cover. Thanks to our sponsor, Agilent, and to our awesome patron listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the illustrious ranks of the patron listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. I'm your host, Shay Gunther. Thanks for tuning in and starting your day with marijuana today.
One take, Shay. One take.